some economists are admitting that economic activity is slowing down. And at this point, that fact would be very difficult to deny because the numbers are very clear. We haven't faced anything like this in a decade, and many are deeply concerned about what is coming next. Will it be just another recession, or will it be an even greater crisis than we faced in 2008? According to Bloomberg Economics, the global economy experienced a sharp loss of speed over the course of 2008, and global economic conditions are now the weakest since the global financial crisis. The global economy's sharp loss of speed through 2018 has left the pace of expansion the weakest since the global financial crisis a decade ago, according to Bloomberg Economics. Its new GDP tracker puts world growth at 2.1% on a quarter-on-quarter annualized basis, down from about 4% in the middle of last year. While there's a chance that the economy may find a foothold and arrest the slowdown, economists Dan Hansen and Tom Orlik say the risk is that downward momentum will be self-sustaining.
America is facing a fiscal crisis of epic proportions.
This is definitely the worst condition that the global economy has been in since I started Epic Economist YouTube channel, and I am personally very alarmed about where things are heading. The tremendous economic optimism of early 2018 has given way to a tremendous wave of pessimism, and the speed at which the economic environment is changing has stunned a lot of the experts. In fact, Bloomberg economists Dan Hansen and Tom Orlik openly admit that they are surprised by how quickly the global economy has shifted, saying the cyclical upswing that took hold of the global economy in mid-2017 was never going to last. Even so, the extent of the slowdown since late last year has surprised many economists, including us. Of course, the US has not been immune from the changes. The US economy is rapidly slowing down as well, and this is something I've been heavily documenting on my website. And now, we have just received more confirmation that the economy is decelerating. The Atlanta Fed has just updated their GDP Now model yet again. With this new revision, they're now projecting that the US economy will grow at a rate of just 0.2% during the first quarter of 2019. Moments ago, we got another confirmation of this when following the latest retail sales report, which saw a dramatic cut to December retail sales, even as January surprised modestly to the upside. The Atlanta Fed slashed its Q1 GDP nowcast, and after rebounding modestly from 0.3% to 0.5% a week ago, it has once again slumped and is now at the lowest recorded level and just 0.2% away from economic contraction. This is how the Atlanta Fed justified its latest Q1 GDP cut, which as of March 11th was just 0.2%, down from 0.5% on March 8th. After this morning's retail sales report from the US Census Bureau, the nowcast of first quarter real personal consumption expenditures growth declined from 1.5% to 1.0%. In other words, we are just a razor-thin margin away from entering an economic contraction. Last week, we learned that U.S. job cut announcements were up 117% in February when compared to last year. All of the economic momentum is in negative direction right now, and it's going to be exceedingly difficult to avert a recession at this point. And of course, a lot of analysts believe that what is coming will be a whole lot worse than just a recession. The greatest debt bubble in the entire history of our planet is in the process of bursting, and the consequences are going to be absolutely horrific. I really like how financial expert Egon von Greyerz recently made this point. People must understand that the world has never faced risk of this magnitude. We're now in the final seconds of the global mega bubble, the likes of which the world has never seen before. What will happen next will be worse than the fall of the Roman Empire, much worse than the South Sea and Mississippi bubbles, and will create a disaster that will dwarf the Great Depression of the 1930s. The problem is simple to define and is all based around debts and liabilities. At the beginning of this century, global debt was $80 trillion. When the Great Financial Crisis started in 2006, global debt has gone up by 56% to $125 trillion. Today, it is
Learn e-commerce, learn real estate. Those are the three foundations of wealth creation in the modern
$50 trillion. The world has never seen anything like this mountain of debt ever before. One of the central themes of Epic Economics' YouTube channel is that all of this debt will ultimately destroy our society. According to the Institute of International Finance, the total amount of global debt is now more than 3 times the size of the global economy. The global debt-to-GDP ratio exceeded 318% in the third quarter of last year, despite a stronger pace of economic growth, according to a report by the Washington-based IIF released on Tuesday. One of the big secrets that nobody's supposed to talk about is the fact that governments don't actually have to borrow money. For example, the US government could start issuing debt-free United States notes tomorrow. And this actually happened for a very brief period of time under President John F. Kennedy in the 1960s, just before he was assassinated. It is highly immoral for us to be borrowing trillions of dollars that we expect future generations to repay. And that is why I have been a huge proponent of shutting down the debt-based Federal Reserve System and ending the debt-based currency known as Federal Reserve notes. But these days, only a small minority of the population seems to care. We are literally debt slaves, and most Americans have seemingly embraced their enslavement. I really like what Debbie Kidd had to say about this in her latest article. The average American is a debt slave already at birth. By the time he dies, his debt will have increased exponentially, thus passing on an even bigger debt and greater enslavement to the next generation. This is a vicious circle that's gone on for just over 100 years. A very small elite has become incredibly wealthy, and the masses have become enslaved by private and government debt. For the majority of people, it will be impossible to extricate themselves from this massive debt stone around their neck. Instead, they will add to the debt by taking on more debt. Wake up! There is no way that a $250 trillion bubble is going to burst in an orderly fashion. Essentially, we are looking at the sort of apocalyptic financial scenario that I've been warning about for a long time. Most people have no idea that it's coming, and if people only listen to the financial authorities, it would be easy to get the impression that everything is going to be just fine. For example, Fed Chair Jay Powell just told 60 Minutes that the outlook for the U.S. economy is a favorable one. The following comes from Fox Business. Jay Powell, the head of the Federal Reserve, says he does not see a recession hitting the U.S. economy anytime soon. Powell said Sunday in an interview with CBS's Scott Pelley for 60 Minutes, "The outlook for our economy, in my view, is a favorable one." If you are tempted to believe Powell, let me remind you of what former Fed Chair Ben Bernanke told Congress in early 2008. The U.S. economy remains extraordinarily resilient, the U.S. Central Bank chief said in answering questions after testifying before the House of Representatives Budget Committee. Bernanke added that growth will be worse this year. "We currently see the economy as continuing to grow, but growing at a relatively slow pace, particularly in the first half of the year," he said. Of course, we all remember what happened next. The U.S. economy plunged into the worst economic downturn since the Great Depression of the 1930s. We're still dealing with the aftermath of that crisis to this day. Nobody is going to ring a bell when the next recession starts. It is just going to happen, just like last time, most Americans are gonna be blindsided by it.